It's pretty crazy to think that this month is the 15-year anniversary from when the PlayStation 2 first came out. Other than the Dreamcast, the PlayStation 2 is definitely one of my all-time favorite systems for many different reasons. One, the library is one of the most varied and largest library of just so many different ridiculous games. And not just ridiculous games, but some of my still favorite series that are like still ongoing now started on the PlayStation 2. And the PS2 was kind of like the last system we saw such a huge like breakup in the different genres of games. Now most games are a mixture of different genres, and although that's not a bad thing, because of the mixture we've gotten some amazing freaking games, but also we kind of miss out on such a large break between the different genres. Everything now is just such a mashup of basically RPG, action, and shooter that, again, although we are getting some awesome games out of the mashup of those genres, I mean, freaking Mass Effect is perfect example of like a RPG shooter, and so many others. That's not just naming just that one, but so many awesome games came out of the mashup. But it also means we're getting a lot of the kind of same, feel of games, and they're all playing the same. There isn't that huge difference of, holy shit, I've never played anything like this, like we got on the PS2. The games on the PS2 were crazy. It's definitely one of the weirdest libraries we've ever had. I mean, there's games like Mr. Mosquito and Katamari Damacy. The first one was my favorite. It was like nothing we'd ever played before. You push around this giant ball, sticky ball, collecting stuff. The music was awesome, and I loved the kind of the record scratching, talking of your father, the king, and when you would get really angry and the lightning would strike and he'd be like, "Rawr!" Yeah, that game was awesome. Also, one of my other favorite weird games was Tulip, which is the game where you go around and the whole objective was to kiss a lot of people. My PS2 is still plugged into my TV, and it's basically for one game because it's still one of my favorite party games, and it's Ribbet King. It's golf, but with frogs. Go! Good! It was on some of the other consoles as well, but I played it mainly for the PlayStation 2. And yeah, it was, I think that they just called it Froth, which is frog golf. Another one of my all-time favorite party games is on the PS2, and I still play that as well, and that's Muppets Party Cruise. Muppets Party Cruise was such an awesome game, especially if you're a huge Muppet fan like myself. I just adored everything about that game, and I loved all the little cutscenes, the little side videos you could watch, and the extras menu, and oh my god, yeah. And just the overall like open-mindedness and creativity that we seem to get from the developers on the PS2, I feel still really hasn't been matched. So my favorite series still started on the PS2. I mean, God of War is like the first one that comes to mind. Kingdom Hearts? We're still waiting on a new Kingdom Hearts. What the hell? A whole console went by, we didn't get a new Kingdom Hearts. One of my other favorites that I don't know if a lot of people have played was Shadow of Destiny. That game was so good. It was kind of like a point-and-click adventure, but it wasn't. It was definitely a more of a story-driven adventure game where you were also kind of having to go back in time because you would make some bad decisions, you'd die, and you'd have to go back in time and figure out what those decisions that you made led to your death and how you can get around that or other people's deaths and stuff in the game. So it was really it was just a lot of fun having to go around and change things and figure shit out without it being just a boring game where I hit A when it tells me to. It was nothing like that. Fatal Frame and Silent Hill. I know Silent Hill started on the PS1, but Silent Hill 2 was on the PS2, and that one's my favorite of all the Silent Hill games. I really couldn't get into any of the other Clock Tower games until Clock Tower 3. I loved that game. And the PS2 really had probably the strongest survival horror lineup as well, because then there was also Haunting Ground, and then there was Obscure, which was like a co-op survival horror game, it wasn't great, but it wasn't bad, and it was the first time I'd ever played like a co-op survival horror game, so that was definitely fun. And memory cards, remember the freaking memory cards? I still have 3 of mine. Those things were ridiculous, and I had like a little, I don't know why I needed a carry pack for my memory cards, but I had one. I wasn't really going anywhere with my memory cards, but I had a little carry pack just in case, and I keep them all safe in there. And you could label them, and I mean the PS2 controller is still one of my favorite controllers. I also really liked N64's controller, which is weird because it's so big, but I don't know, I liked it, and GameCube controllers was really good. But the PS2 controller, when I think of video games, my mind instantly pictures the PlayStation 2 DualShock controller. I do miss the kind of adventure platform games from the PS2 days, stuff like Whiplash. Still one of my all-time favorites. When are we gonna get a remastered Whiplash? I would buy that for whatever cost they wanted to put on it. It's such a good game. Also, Sphinx and the Cursed Mummy. It was kind of where we saw the death of Spyro when they decided to rebrand him. And this was before Skylanders. It's like A New Beginning, I think it was called. I miss you, Spyro. And there's Jak and Daxter and Ratchet and Clank, Crash Bandicoot. I know that some of those also started on the PS1, but they saw like their heyday in the PS2. And another one of my favorite adventure games was iNinja. Did any of you guys play iNinja? That game was the cutest and like most fun.
Have some more? Have some more! Feel my steel!
I adored that game. Oh man, there's so many games I'm talking about I want to go back and play now. And of course there's Super Monkey Ball, which I was so addicted to that game. So freaking addicted. It was so good. And there's been other Super Monkey Balls. Super Monkey Balls. There's been other in the Super Monkey Ball series games, whatever, but it just wasn't as good as the first one. I mean, that main game where you're having to go through each of the, God, there were so many levels, and get to the end before you die and collect bananas, and oh my God, it was so addictive. I played that for so long. The PS2 was definitely like the height of Rockstar games for me. Of course, we got GTA 3, which was great, but then Vice City came out, and that by far has been my favorite GTA game. Also, we got Max Payne, Manhunt. That game was definitely where I realized that I had a little bit of a scary love for violence. I loved the gore and violence in that game. My favorite was definitely when you would get that wire and you put it over that guy's, like, his head, and you would put your foot on the back of his, like, shoulders, and you just saw the wire back and forth until his head popped off. Yeah, that was great. Definitely on the PS2 was when I was a huge Rockstar fangirl. They've let me down since then. Oh, and Bully. God, I love Bully. I like that they re-released it on the 360, but come on, we needed Bully 2. What the hell's taking so long? Enough GTAs, give me Bully 2. And then lastly, we cannot forget 2 of the other best games on the PS2 was the Guy game. That was kind of like You Don't Know Jack, but with girls at spring break actually taking their tops off, and you could see real naked boobies. Oh my God.
1, 2, 3!
Yeah!
3!
First time I ever saw naked boobs in a video game. It was quite memorable. That game has now been pulled off shelves, and it was banned later because they realized or found out one of the girls was underage. That's always the case. There's always one chick who lies about her age or feels bad that she showed her tits on camera.
What's wrong with you? Don't you want to see titties?
But I have a copy because I kept my copy, so I do have the original copy of the Guy game. And to follow up with the Guy game, of course, is another game that I had to own because it's so surreal, and that's the Bible game.
Let's see what everyone knows about the Old Testament.
Blessed be your name in the land that is plentiful.
Be very afraid. I feel a wrath of God lurking.
You guys, the Bible game was awful. Of course it was, but it was awfully awesome. And I was working at GameStop, or it was EB back then. But I was working at EB at the time the Bible game came out, and we had, our shipment of new releases coming out, and the only thing that was missing out of the boxes was we had 5 copies of the Bible game stolen. Somebody stole the Bible game. That's the worst game to steal, you idiots. And one of my all-time favorite cutscenes in a video game came from the PS2. It's Leisure Suit Larry Come de Laud, I think it was what it was called. And I talked about this in one of my past videos, but it's where you are supposedly, totally sleeping with this chick, and she starts to hear like chips crunching, and she turns on the light, and Yoshi is digging her way through the couch. And you have strapped a dildo onto, or strapped a strap on, whatever, I don't know what the specifics are, onto her teddy bear, and you had her doing her teddy bear. At the time, my age, when I played that and I saw that cutscene, my mind was blown, but it was awesome. It's like, holy shit, they put this in a video game? This game is awesome! But anyways, enough of what my favorite memories are and favorite games on the PS2 were. Let me know what some of your favorites are. What are some of the games that maybe a lot of people have heard of, maybe not really a lot of people have heard of at all, that still has a place in your heart from the days of the PS2. And if you want to hear more memories about the PS2 days, I recently did a video with the Zoom In Games guys, and just me and some other awesome YouTubers talking about our best memories of the PS2. So check out that video, and as always, I totally love you guys.